And welcome to the special audience edition of Hannity. Now, this week marks the 5th anniversary of Fox Nation. Now, that's the place where America comes to find information on the hottest topics and to voice their opinion on the big issues of the day. And in honor of being a defender of the Constitution for half a decade, we are basing tonight's show around the most viewed and commented story ever posted on this site. It was the great, incredible Paul Harvey's Warning for a Nation. Now, back in 1964, the iconic radio host wrote an article entitled, "If I Were the Devil," and over the years, he adapted and added to the dire prediction about where this country was headed. Now, listen to the first portion of an audio version that he read back in 1996.
If I were the devil, I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, "Do as you please." To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, "Our Father, which art in Washington." And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills.
So was Paul Harvey in a way like Nostradamus? We're going to play more of his dire warning throughout tonight's show, and with the help of our studio audience, we're going to offer solutions. How do we fix America's problems? But to be clear, we aren't the only ones who believe something needs to be done to adjust the course here at home. According to the latest survey from Rasmussen Report, 62% of those polled said that the country is on the wrong track, and only 30% believe we're headed in the right direction. So to kick things off, we bring in our studio audience. Let me put up on the screen one thing here. And it's millennials and religion. First of all, how many here believe in God, if you don't mind me asking? Hi, Amy. We'll get to that in a second. All right, all of you believe in God. Do you all believe in the devil? Does anybody not believe in the devil? You believe in God, but not the devil, Noah.
Well, there's something to be said for being leery of organized religion, which I think is what millennials would say broadly is what they find unattractive. Being spiritual and having a belief in something that's higher in an organizing theory, which is God, is something that's distinct from organized religion, which a lot of people have really serious problems with.
We have a poll, Noah, on that, too, and it shows that millennials are less likely to believe in God. If you look at the numbers, 18 to 33, 58%. As people get older, they tend to be getting closer to the pearly gates, so maybe they want a last minute.
So maybe I'll get there in a couple of years.
Well, yeah. Is that a hint? I guess the point is, Amy, you say you don't believe in God. I'm surprised. I've known you all these years. I didn't know. Are you an atheist or agnostic?
I'm agnostic. I mean, I don't take any special pride in my lack of spirituality here. And I don't think you have to believe in God to see that there is something sinister that is going on in our culture right now, particularly our political culture. When we look at the hounding and the persecution of a man like Brendan Ike of Mozilla, and having these, these budding Robespierres wanting to hound him from political, or rather public life.
Wasn't Nazi Germany evil? Kirsten Powers, that was evil, right? Huh? The treatment of women in some radical Islamic countries is pretty evil, right? Yep. Rape, murder, pedophiles, are they evil? Is that human evil?
Yeah.
Is there spiritual forces at work there?
I think there are. I mean, I'm a Christian, so I think it's very hard. I know there are a lot of Christians that will say, I believe in God, but I don't believe in the devil. But Jesus believed in the devil. So if you believe the Bible,
cast out demons, right?
Yeah, if you believe in the Bible, I don't think it's the question of
what. I wonder if I can cast out your liberal demon.
It's a question of not a demon. My angel.
Yeah, your angel.
As a Jew, we do not have as carefully formed a notion of good and bad and the devil, but we have a belief in a Judeo-Christian ethic that in the context of politics and political life says that we have unique values, cultures, and life experience that makes us a beacon for the world and able to transmit to those who want to see and hear a pattern of how to live and govern ourselves.
But Doug, I would argue when Ahmadinejad or the mullahs in Iran talk about wiping Israel off the map, they want a modern-day Holocaust that would be human evil.
Of course they would, right? But I don't see them as the devil. I believe that what we need to do is to imbue in our culture and our values and in our political discourse a sense that we can be as good a people as the Bible says we are.
Sean, I think that there's an aspect of that statistic that you put up there that is sort of being lost. The real problem with millennials today in terms of their faith is not that there's so many people who are distrustful of organized religion. It's that there's a larger and larger portion of them who actually don't want to have any opinion on religion. I would rather there were more atheists who had thought this through, as opposed to the rising portion that we see from the Barna Foundation and others that have no opinion or think they have no opinion. From my perspective, that devalues the whole issue of faith. It just shoves it to the side as opposed to grappling with the real ramifications.
I have to disagree a little bit. I do actually think that a lot of millennials are very fed up with organized religion and with the church. And look, I'm fed up with them, and I consider myself a devout Christian. So it doesn't mean that they don't believe in the Bible, but they are tired of sort of the religious right and the culture war.
But see, when you dig into it,
maybe we're getting off track just a hair here.
The Bible into a political weapon.
If I can, Lauren, let me maybe put up on the screen. Let's look at the cultures. I think that Paul Harvey, by the way, I think the greatest radio broadcaster ever, and I spent an hour on the phone with Paul Harvey Jr. last night. We were talking about this and his father and what a great broadcaster he was. And look at the antidepressant use in the country. It's up 400%. If you look 1988 to 1994, 2005, 2008, up 400%. Now let's take a look at Miley Cyrus. Just one cultural icon, if you will. Twerking, okay? We'll put it up on our screen. You can see her over there and some of the videos. Has the culture declined? And is it related in some way to what Paul Harvey was warning about?
Absolutely. It has absolutely declined.
You don't look like Lauren.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
No,
go ahead. Jump right in.
No, it has absolutely declined, and Paul Harvey was exactly right. But what has happened in terms of religion's responsibility as a minister, I shoulder a lot of that responsibility. I look out there and say, what am I doing wrong? What has my generation of ministers and spiritual leaders or religious leaders done wrong? And we made a business out of religion. We made a cult out of religion.
But you're a pastor. You haven't done that, have you?
No. Well, it was headed in that direction, and 7 years ago, I left. I unplugged. I left my large church with stained glass windows and high back chairs and organ music, and I started another church in a bowling alley. Because
so you get the bowl between sermons?
We were rolling for Jesus.
Rolling for Jesus?
Wow.
But you know,
every generation has had their version of Miley Cyrus. I think of Madonna, but I think Madonna was very different.
We're talking about,
Miley
go back.
Cyrus.
You go back
She
to
at
the
least
40s and
had a
50s in
What's
American
Miley's
schools.
message?
What were the top problems? We did a whole series on spring break. You were part of it. Some of you.
Chewing gum and
running in the halls, chewing gum, talking in class. What is it today? Pregnancy, drug use, alcohol abuse, and suicide?
Segregation wasn't a problem at all.
Segregation wasn't the biggest problem in the schools in the 50s. Now we have a new DSM-5 that has given us all these new mental disorders, and now we need to drug all of our children, exactly as Paul Harvey said. It's like he was clairvoyant. And so we're drugging all of our youth, and then we wonder why we've had this massive decline. You take God out, you take away their moral wheelhouse. They have nowhere to go when they have a moral conflict. They don't even know what truth is anymore, and then we're drugging them on top of it. What do we expect?
We're idealizing a time
Lauren,
period.
go ahead. Yeah.
We're idealizing a time period and looking back on
honestly,
something
as a millennial,
that existed at the time.
as a millennial, I think it's really important to know that
Allison, go ahead. Remind us that you're younger than everyone else. Go ahead.
There, of course, are young millennials that are leaving the organized church, but there is a large demographic also that's leaving what they did not like and finding what they did like in religion, and that's right and wrong and structure. There's something to be said about this generation that was raised being told you can do whatever you want, there's no right and wrong, whatever, and then to see the consequential depression, the suicides, the pain that comes from feeling like there might not be a right and wrong and my life is not worth anything. So I think you have to speak to both and talk about why maybe they're leaving the organized.
That's a good point, I think.
There is what's happening in American culture today is lack of personal responsibility. What we're in terms of drugging our children, instead of teaching them about how to handle their emotions and how to handle certain problems, here, take this pill. A teenager gets pregnant, oh, go get an abortion instead of handling it. Parents aren't teaching their kids the way they used to in the 50s and 60s, and that's why what Paul Harvey said was so accurate.
Katie?
I would agree with that the personal responsibility is also an issue, but I think that we've also flipped in our culture the definition of things and consequences for actions. So, for example, the anti-bullying movement. everyone hates bullying, but when you look at these no tolerance policies that punish everyone rather than just the person who's at fault, it creates this culture of everyone feeling that like they're doing something wrong, but at the same time, no one's held accountable for the actions that they're taking. And so that happens in our schools, and it also happens with our parents. You know, a lot of people don't have two parents in their home, and that has been a big shift that we've seen since the 50s and 60s as well, leaving kids at home after school doing what they want to and having no consequences for their actions.
Moms now. 1 in 3 moms is stay at home.
Yeah.
But if I could address your comment that every generation has a Madonna, certainly the celebration of decadence has long been in American culture. But what I see that is so disturbing is that it gets younger and younger, that we are sexualizing little girls at younger and younger ages, which is part of why what's been happening with Miley Cyrus is so disturbing to so many people. And you don't have to be religious to see that there's something very wrong there.
All right, we're going to pick up our discussion, and we're going to come back and continue. Coming up, we're just getting started. We're going to play more of Paul Harvey's dire warning right after the break as our studio audience edition of Hannity continues. We're glad you're with us.